Hey everybody, and welcome back to History Student Reacts. Today, I'm going to be reacting to Belisarius, the Emperor's Sword, by Epic History TV. So, this is the first episode in Epic History TV's Belisarius series. I'm reacting to this because I know you guys are enjoying the Napoleonic Wars series so much, and I've got some recommendations for this one. I've been really enjoying Epic History TV. I know a little bit about Belisarius. I know he was a general under Justinian, a very talented and successful guy. He sort of participated in Justinian's ambitious military conquests. So, yeah, I know a bit about him, but I'm excited to get more specifically into his achievements, conquests, battles. I know Epic History TV always does a great job, so yeah. Hope you guys are as excited as I am, and let's jump right into it.
(532 AD). Constantinople, the greatest city in the world, is in flames.
Uh-oh.
But this is no barbarian attack. Citizens of the Eastern Roman Empire are rioting, murdering state officials and setting buildings on fire. Trapped inside his own palace.
I believe this is the Nika Revolt, I think.
Emperor Justinian fears his reign is over.
Justinian faced this early in his reign. The preceding couple of emperors had all faced revolts as well. This revolt was pretty brutal, which I think we'll get into. But yeah, not a great moment for you as emperor. You've got this massive revolt on your hands. You need to consolidate your power.
He's already given in to the mob's demands and sacked his most hated officials.
Yep.
But now the crowds acclaim a new emperor, Hypatius. It's his wife, Empress Theodora, who'll give him the courage to act. And his most trusted general, Belisarius, to whom he'll turn to crush his enemies and save the regime.
Yeah, so this is a pretty big moment in Justinian's career. It's a pretty famous speech by Theodora where she convinces him to stay and fight. And this is also a moment where Belisarius will really prove himself. I think this is one of the first times in his career where he really starts to earn the respect of Justinian. And Belisarius will only move up from here.
After centuries of imperial crisis, Justinian's reign will witness a Roman fightback that few had dreamed possible.
Yeah.
Great victories over the barbarians, the reconquest of Rome itself, the reunification of the empire. Belisarius is the commander who will lead this onslaught. He will be remembered as Rome's last great general.
Wow.
Math and science are not subjects we talk about enough on Epic History TV, unless we're calculating casualties or describing the first mission to the moon.
Ad time, I
For
think.
historians especially, math can seem a strange and scary place. But our sponsor, Brilliant, offers the ideal way to get to grips with the fundamentals of math,
sponsor.
science, and computer science.
This
Their
is a new
website features
video
more than
especially,
60 courses.
so
All feature
I'll watch
clear
through the ad. Go
explanations
check
and
it out,
interactive
guys.
problem solving to help you understand something large and wondrous. Take this lesson from Brilliant's Geometry Fundamentals course, for example. Many people know that the area's upper circle rectangle, and from that, ancient Greek used the shadow of an obelisk to work out history to sign up for free.
All right.
The first 200 will
Check
also be
that out,
offered
guys.
20% off an annual premium subscription. Thanks again to Brilliant for sponsoring this video.
All right, here we go.
(527 AD). It's more than 50 years since the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Rome itself, the Eternal City, is now part of an Ostrogothic kingdom of Italy.
Yeah, although to be fair, at this point, the city of Rome itself had not been prominent for a long time. Emperors had been residing outside of Rome for God, perhaps hundreds of years at this point. Not like many hundreds, but for a while. So Rome, had long lost its influence, but it was still of great symbolic influence, if not of any actual, political influence.
But though Rome may have fallen, the empire endures. The Eastern Roman Empire remains a force to be reckoned with.
And this is something interesting to touch on, is our distinction between the Roman Empire and the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantine Empire is kind of just like a later construction by historians. The Byzantines never thought of themselves as distinct from the Romans. They were the Romans. They were the continuation of the Roman Empire. Now, later on, us historians decided, well, we're going to make a distinction just because it became so different and such a different thing. The Byzantine Empire, particularly later on, is going to grow to have less and less in common with the Roman Empire. So I think the distinction is fair. It helps us put things into perspective. But keep in mind that, they didn't think of themselves as any different from the Romans. They thought of themselves as Romans. They were the Roman Empire. And all that territory in the Western Roman Empire that had fallen to Goths and Franks, they wanted it back because that was their rightful territory as Romans.
An estimated 30 million people live under the rule of the emperor in Constantinople. His authority stretches from the ravaged Balkans to the imperial breadbasket, Egypt.
Yep.
The Arabian desert to the mountains of Armenia. This Christian empire remains unrivaled in administrative sophistication, economic power, and military might. But the new emperor, Justinian, faces formidable challenges. In 527, he succeeds Justin, his uncle and adopted father, becoming the first son to succeed his father as emperor in more than a century.
Yeah.
Justinian is from a tough peasant background in Thrace, what's now Serbia. He's highly educated, restless and driven, and sets himself two ambitious goals. First, to restore harmony in the Christian Church by ending the schism between Chalcedonian or Orthodox Christians and Miaphysites, who argue over Christ's human and divine nature. Second, to reform and rationalize Roman law, the divinely sanctioned institution that distinguishes the Roman world from the barbarian. The imperial majesty should not only be adorned with arms, but also be armed with laws, so that there may be good government in times both of war and peace.
Justinian was a very ambitious guy, as you can see from his goals. He was a believer, both in the Roman Empire, as we will see from his actions. He was a believer in the Roman Empire, its laws, its traditions. He was also a believer in Christianity. He was a very devout Orthodox Christian. He believed in the supremacy of Christianity. He believed in its importance. He wanted to bring the empire together through Christianity. He believed that, he did believe in the Roman Empire and its laws, but he also believed that now we needed Christian laws. We're a Christian empire. We need Christian laws, because Christianity is the truth, So, yeah, Justinian was a very, very ambitious fellow. He had big goals that he laid out ahead of them. And I think we'll see throughout this series in Belisarius how Justinian went about achieving those goals, and if he achieved those goals in the end.
He later declares, "But as for any Roman emperor, the ultimate test of his legitimacy will come in war." For now, Justinian has good relations with the Vandals in North Africa and the Ostrogoths in Italy.
Yep.
The Balkan frontier requires constant vigilance. The successors to Attila's Hun Empire are never quiet for long. But it's in the east that Justinian faces his most immediate challenge: the Persian Sassanid Empire, a rival superpower of the Middle East. This frontier has been a battleground for centuries and witnessed its share of Roman defeats.
Oh yeah, and, you know, I mean, Rome and the Byzantines, they always think of themselves as, you know, civilization. We are civilization, everyone else is barbarians. Perhaps the only exception to that was Persia, the Persian Empire, under whatever name it would be called. The Persian Empire was always a rival and equal to the Roman Empire, particularly the Persian Empire and the Byzantine Empire. So they were big-time rivals. They saw each other basically as equals, and they were always competing. Although sometimes, you know, they had long stretches of peace, there was often warfare between them, and it was often, you know, pretty destructive.
Including one emperor captured, another killed.
Yep.
For most of the last century, the shared menace of the Huns led to a wary coexistence. But it could not last. In 525, the Christian king of Iberia in the Caucasus appealed to the Romans for aid when the Persian king Cavad tried to impose Zoroastrian rituals on his country. The Romans send military aid, and the conflict escalates.
And Zoroastrianism is the ancient religion of Persia. Now, nowadays, Persia, or Iran, as we call it, is a Muslim country. You know, they adopted Islam, but Zoroastrianism was their ancient traditional religion, as, you know, the Byzantines, or the Eastern Roman empires, was Orthodox Christianity. So there's a lot of competition over that as well.
With both sides launching cross-border raids. When the Romans begin building a new fort at Minduos, the Persians attack, rout the Roman troops, and destroy the building works. One of the Roman generals to escape this debacle is Flavius Belisarius. Clearly, he is not blamed, because the next year Justinian makes him commander of all Roman troops in the east, though he's barely 30 years old.
Wow.
Belisarius and the emperor are old comrades, and come from the same humble background in Thrace. He had served in Justinian's own regiment when he was still heir to the throne. His wife Antonina is the best friend of Empress Theodora, and like her, from a dubious background in the acting profession.
Yeah, being an actor was not a respected profession at the time. It was more close to, I guess, like being a prostitute. You know, it was not respected, particularly not respected among the high society of Constantinople. You know, these are sort of regular people. I mean, as they mentioned, Justinian was from a peasant farmer background, you know, and both of the men's wives were from, like, you know, women of the street backgrounds, actors, prostitutes, and they've risen all the way to the top of society. It's quite a precipitous rise, and we've got quite an ambitious bunch who want to achieve a lot, perhaps because they've already achieved a lot. They've already risen from the bottom to the top.
With both Roman and Persian empires mobilizing for war, the next year, 530, will see Belisarius' first major test as a commander. The troops that Belisarius commands are far removed from the famous legions with which Rome conquered its empire centuries ago.
Oh yes.
Hard lessons learned from fighting Huns and Persians have helped to forge a new Roman army. For centuries, cavalry was the neglected arm of the Roman military, a role usually outsourced to foreign auxiliaries. Now, heavy armored cavalry known as clibanarii and cataphracti, armed with lance and sword, form the army's elite shock units. Some armored cavalry, as well as cursores, light cavalry, also carry bows. The Romans, in imitation of the Huns and Persians, are now horse archers themselves.
Yeah, the horse archer was one of the biggest innovations of this era. You know, the Huns dominated their opponents because of their skilled horse archers, and many of the tribes that remained in the wake of the Huns would continue to use horse archers. the Romans intelligently, after getting, their ass whooped, decided to adopt this tactic. And as they're showing here, this is very much changed from, say, the early Roman Empire. But, I mean, it's good. They've evolved. They've picked up the tactics of their enemies, and they've adopted some of their strategies and formation types. They've adopted stuff like horse archers, which is necessary in this era of combat. So, yeah, very much different.
The best units are the Bucellari, the biscuit eaters, named after the army ration. These hand-picked soldiers form a general's personal regiment. Long service, good pay and equipment, plus a personal oath of loyalty make them his most reliable troops. Roman archers are now armed with the more powerful composite reflex bows of the Huns. And while infantry still made up around 2/3 of a Roman army, its role is more defensive, forming a secure base from which the cavalry could launch its attacks. The standard infantry unit is also smaller, called a numerus in Latin, arithmos in Greek, about regimental size, from 1,000 to 1,500 men. They're more mixed, with armoured veterans to form a fulcrum or shield wall, and more missile troops behind them to unleash a barrage of arrows, javelins and darts. Finally, Rome boosts its military strength by recruiting the very barbarians it had once despised, including Huns, Goths and Heruli. Those outside the empire are recruited as mercenaries. Those within serve as foederati, federates, and are usually commanded by their own officers. The military organization of the empire has also been overhauled. 2 central field armies stationed on either side of the Bosphorus are commanded by a magister militum presentalis and form a strategic reserve. Field armies based in Thrace, Illyria, Armenia, and the East are each commanded by a magister militum.
As you can see, they are keeping up a lot of field armies. You know what that takes? A lot of money. A lot of tax money. The Eastern Roman Empire, as the Roman Empire before it, they had a lot of infrastructure, bureaucracy, military to keep up, and it took a lot of taxes. This is a very complex system that they have going at this point. And it acts far more defensively than the Roman military did, say, in the early empire, back in the time of, Augustus. This is a very defensive force because it's so expensive to upkeep. Very much changed from, we're watching the Historia Civilis videos, very much changed from the Roman Republic and the early empire.
And form regional rapid reaction forces. The frontiers are held by the Limitani. These are the lowest paid and least well-equipped troops, only expected to hold their fortified outposts until reinforcements arrive. Limitani are organized into local groups, each commanded by a dux, origin of our word, duke.
These are sort of like border militias, basically. Least paid among the troops. Sometimes, if the empire's going through a tough time, not paid at all. So yeah, these are sort of local militias that serve as border guards, and they're not meant to do anything, as they mentioned, apart from hold off enemies until a field army can make it there.
Yet the thought has many times occurred to me, how many and how great are the benefits which accrue to states through history, which transmits to future generations the memory of those who have gone before, and resists the steady effort of time to bury events in oblivion.
From Procopius, who is the reason that we have a lot of the information we have on Belisarius and Justinian. He was a historian at the time, but I'm sure we'll get into Procopius more as the series goes on.
The historian Procopius is our key witness.
Well, okay, we're getting into it right now.
For the events of this period. He was born around 500 in the city of Caesarea in Palestine and received a first-class education. In 527, he was appointed assessor, or legal advisor, to Belisarius. He effectively became the general's secretary, and on occasion, aide-de-camp. Working from notes and writing in Greek, he would publish his great work, History of the Wars, in 551. Procopius's account is highly favorable to Belisarius, but there will be a sting in the tale, a scandalous secret history, which will emerge later in the tale.
I won't talk about it. I'll leave it for it to emerge naturally throughout the series. But yeah, Procopius is where we get most of our information from.
530 AD. King Kavad sends an army to capture the Roman frontier fortress at Dara. Today, the ruins of Dara lie on the Turkish-Syrian border, their scale hinting at the size of the Roman fortress that once stood here. Belisarius is warned that 40,000 Persian troops are advancing on Dara. He can only assemble 25,000 troops to meet them. For reasons that are unclear, Belisarius decides to make his stand outside the city walls to the south. His men dig ditches to strengthen their position, with both flanks thrown forward. The infantry is placed in the center, with cavalry on both flanks. Two groups of 600 Hun mercenaries are positioned between them in support. At the rear, he places his reserve, his own Bucellari. When the huge Persian army arrives before Dara, Belisarius is ready and waiting. The first day begins with a standoff. The two generals exchange letters. Belisarius urges Firuz to withdraw, to allow time for further negotiations. Firuz tells the Roman to prepare his bath. He intends to be in Dara by nightfall.
So sassy.
The Persians launch one probing attack against the Roman left wing, perhaps testing their defenses. The Persians are driven off, with 7 killed. When a young Persian warrior rides between the lines and challenges any Roman to face him in single combat, his offer is accepted by Andreas. Andreas has no military training, but he's a wrestling instructor of huge strength. Before the Persian knows what's happening, Andreas has knocked him off his horse with his lance, then dismounts to finish him off.
Wow.
Like a sacrificial animal, in the words of Procopius. Andreas later kills a second Persian challenger, to Roman cheers and the dismay of the Persians.
Tough guy.
The next morning, Firuz receives 10,000 reinforcements, bringing his total strength to 50,000. With odds of 2 to 1 in his favor, he decides to attack. Firuz forms up his army, with infantry and foot archers in the center, and his Persian heavy cavalry, the feared Savaran, on both wings. He also divides his army into 2 parts, a front line and a reserve line, so that fresh troops can be rotated into the fighting. He keeps a unit of immortals, the elite Persian heavy cavalry, as his personal reserve. But first, he waits. He knows the Romans usually eat in the morning and are growing hungry, while his own troops are accustomed to eating later in the day. Finally, at noon, he gives the order. The Persian army advances to within bowshot, and both armies unleash a storm of arrows. Persia is famed for the skill of its archers, but today, the wind favors the Romans. When the archers run out of arrows, the Persian cavalry begins its advance. This is the moment Belisarius has prepared for. The Savaran crash into his left wing, driving the Roman horsemen back. But the Persians haven't spotted 300 Heruli horsemen hidden behind a slope on the Roman left, waiting for this moment. They rush out from cover and attack the Persian cavalry from behind. Then 600 Huns fall on their flank.
Nice.
Under this onslaught, the Persian cavalry turns and flees, with heavy losses. Firuz switches to the other flank, attacking with his heavy cavalry, supported by the elite immortals. The Roman cavalry breaks under the pressure, streaming back to the walls of Dara. But Belisarius has seen the threat. He recalls the Huns that are pursuing the Persian right wing and launches both Hun groups, as well as his own Bukellari, against the flank and rear of the Persian attack.
You know, I mean, Belisarius is very much outnumbered, but we can see some active leadership here. You know, he's moving quickly, he's taking advantage of the maneuverability of some of his forces, and he's repositioning, you know, smart.
It's the decisive moment of the battle. The Persian left wing suddenly finds itself under attack from three sides. Those that can't escape are cut down. Sunikas, one of the Hun captains, kills a Persian standard-bearer, then General Barsham himself, who commands the Persian left wing.
Wow. Nice.
With the elite units of the Persian army in flight, the infantry offers little resistance. Most are peasant conscripts, no match for Roman cavalry.
Yep.
Soon the entire Persian army is en route. Belisarius, content with his victory and unwilling to risk any last-minute reverse, halts the pursuit. Procopius tells us 8,000 Persians lay dead on the battlefield, a number that could be accurate. For on that day, the Persians had been defeated in battle by the Romans, a thing which had not happened for a long time. Belisarius has won a brilliant victory for the empire. Later that year, Sitas, Magister Militum of Armenia, wins another victory over the Persians at Satala. The war is swinging in Rome's favor. But the following year, encouraged by a Samaritan revolt in Palestine, King Kavad orders a large-scale raid along the Euphrates River. Belisarius assembles an army to meet them. But having ravaged Roman territory, the Persians are content to withdraw with their loot. Belisarius...
I mean, yeah, with the Romans and the Persians, there's just constant back and forth. Sometimes the Persians will have the upper hand for a while, sometimes the Romans will, but they're always going back and forth. It feels like it's never ending sometimes.
Shadows them. His subordinates urge him to destroy the enemy before they escape. So, against his better judgment, he attacks the Persians on Easter Sunday at...
Belisarius was fairly cautious general. So that's why they're saying against his better judgment, and that's why he didn't pursue the enemies at Dara. He's a pretty cautious guy. You know, he'll play it safe if he can.
Callinicum. The battle is a disaster. Rome's Arab allies, the Sassanids, hold the right flank. But Procopius accuses them of fleeing at the first sign of danger. Persian cavalry rolls up the entire Roman line.
So it's important to note that, that may be true, or this may be a Roman historian attempting to protect Roman pride. They may have fled, and I'm not sure if we have other sources on that, or it may be just a convenient scapegoat, as was often used throughout history, not just ancient history.
In desperation, the Roman infantry form a shield wall with their backs to the river. They hold off the enemy cavalry, buying time for the remains of the army to escape across the river. Callinicum is a humiliation for Rome and for Belisarius.
Yeah.
His own role in the battle is unclear. According to Procopius, he remained with the infantry, organizing the retreat. Another source claims he was among the first to flee.
Ooh.
It had clearly been a serious blunder to give in to pressure from his subordinates to fight an unnecessary battle.
Yeah.
Belisarius is removed from command and recalled to Constantinople. Justinian is forced to pay a subsidy and make a compromise peace with Persia. Not with King Kavad, who dies that year, but with his 20-year-old son, Khosrow. Khosrow will prove to be the greatest of all Sasanian kings, hailed as Anushirvan, the immortal soul.
Yeah, he is a fitting rival for Justinian. A very impressive legacy.
And will prove a dangerous rival to the Romans.
Yep.
When major rioting breaks out in Constantinople the next year, Belisarius is in the capital.
Yeah, we're getting to the Nika Revolt. You know, I mean, Justinian doesn't have much of a choice. He pays for this eternal peace. It's obviously not even close to eternal. But, you know, to many Romans, this is extremely offensive because it looks like, you know, well, we lost and now what? We're paying tribute? It's not necessarily tribute. I mean, Justinian is paying an equal power for peace between them. But this looks very much to a lot of Romans like he's paying a superior power tribute so that they can live under the rule of the, under threat of Persian invasion. So many people are not happy about this.
Eager to restore his tarnished reputation. The riots have been instigated by the factions of the Hippodrome, the Greens and Blues. These are more than chariot racing fans. The factions run whole areas of the city.
Yup.
At first, they seek only the release of jailed comrades. But then there are calls for a new emperor, Hypatius, nephew of Emperor Anastasius. It's likely that Justinian's rivals in the Senate are now pulling the strings.
Yeah, and if you think about this, you know, Justinian rises with his uncle Justin. These guys are, like we mentioned, they come from a poor peasant farmer background. And they're very successful, but a lot of people are, particularly a lot of the Constantinople elites, are very much not pleased about that. You know, they want someone more legitimate, and so when the time is right and these revolts break out, you know, a lot of these elites will turn to Hypatius, you know, relation to Anastasius, who came before, as like a return to a more legitimate royal line. So, you know, that kind of plays into this whole situation.
Justinian hesitates. He wonders if they should flee the capital. Then Theodora speaks up. Life as a fugitive, she declares, would be unendurable. Better the old saying, royal purple makes a noble shroud. In other words, better to go down fighting.
Yep.
The emperor is emboldened by Theodora's words and orders Belisarius and another general, Mundus, to crush the revolt. Belisarius's hardened troops launch a sudden attack on the rioters. There is no mercy. The streets run with blood.
Brutal.
The final death toll is estimated at 30,000. A staggering...
I mean, can you imagine that? Like, it's absolutely insane. These are riots in Constantinople, and 30,000 people killed to put them down. I mean, could you even imagine that? I mean, it's just crazy. It's just an absolutely insane amount of bloodshed.
1 in 20 of the city's population.
Yeah.
The next day, Justinian orders the execution of Hypatius and his brother. Probably innocent pawns in somebody else's plot.
Yeah.
Their bodies are tossed into the sea.
You know, cruel, brutal, along with the murder of 30,000, but, you know, what choice does he have? He's not going to let them stay alive. That's far too much of a risk.
Thanks to Theodora and Belisarius, Justinian's throne is safe, for now. A Roman emperor relied on one quality more than any other from his generals: loyalty. Belisarius has proved his beyond doubt.
Yup.
Now, Justinian needs to shore up support for his regime, assert his legitimacy and God's favour with a military victory. He has his costly peace with the Sassanid Empire, so he will turn west. A war to reclaim Rome's lost provinces from the barbarians will be a service to God and Justinian. Such a mission can be entrusted to only one man: Belisarius. Massive thanks to Legendarian for providing our Total War.
Alright, that was a great video. This is really the start of Belisarius' rise. We saw against the Persians, we have a victory and a loss, and the loss really tarnished Belisarius' reputation. But good thing Belisarius was by Justinian's side in the Nika Revolts. He was really a key figure in putting the revolts down. AKA massacring 30,000 people. From this point on, he's proved his loyalty to Justinian, and this will start Belisarius' rise to become the successful general that he will become. This was a great introduction. It really gives us an introduction to Belisarius' career, and also gives us some information on Justinian. So I enjoyed this one. I hope you guys did. I'm going to continue on with this series, if you guys like it, So if you do like it, leave a like and subscribe to let me know that you're enjoying this one. Please check out the Patreon, and I hope to see you guys back next time. Goodbye, and hope y'all are having a good day.